The Sanctuary Decree. The Galactic Collective had existed for over 12,000 cycles, a grand assembly of civilizations that spanned 47 star systems. Within its halls of crystalline architecture and floating data streams, representatives from dozens of species gathered to maintain order, facilitate trade, and protect the vulnerable. The collective prided itself on one particular achievement above all others: the Sanctuary Protocols. These protocols identified emerging species across the galaxy, those still confined to their homeworlds or barely reaching beyond their own stars. Species deemed too fragile, too naive, or too dangerous to themselves were granted protected status. It was an honor, the elder races insisted, a shield against the harsh realities of galactic politics, war, and exploitation. Humanity received this designation in the year 2247. Shortly after their first crewed faster-than-light vessel stumbled into collective space. The human ship, held together by what the aliens could only describe as optimism and welding tape, had barely survived its maiden voyage. The crew, bewildered and exhausted, were greeted not with hostility, but with something far more condescending: pity. The Council's judgment. The ruling chamber of the collective was an imposing space. Holographic projections of council members from across the galaxy flickered in a circular arrangement, each representing their species with carefully maintained dignity. At the center stood three humans: Ambassador Elena Vasquez, Chief Engineer Marcus Webb, and Dr. Amara Okonkwo, xenobiologist at the Xylothian Prime Speaker. A being of pure energy contained within a magnetic field addressed them first. Its voice resonated like wind chimes in a storm. Humanity of Earth, you have been evaluated according to the standards set forth in the Sanctuary Protocols. We have reviewed your history, your technological development, and your biological constitution. Elena stood straight, her hands clasped behind her back. We appreciate the collective's attention to our species. Your appreciation is noted, continued a Morphidian representative, its 6 eyes blinking in sequence. However, we must inform you of our decision. Humanity is hereby granted protected status under Section 7 of the Galactic Charter. Marcus leaned toward Elena and whispered, "That sounds good, right?" The Morphidian's translator picked up his words. "It is the highest honor we can bestow upon a developing species. You will be shielded from exploitation, warfare, and the more dangerous aspects of galactic civilization." Dr. Okonkwo stepped forward. "What exactly does this protection entail?" A Kelvorian resembling a massive reptilian creature with crystalline growths along its spine answered, "Your species will not be permitted to engage in military conflicts. You will not be allowed to develop weapons of planetary destruction. Your trade will be supervised to ensure you are not taken advantage of. Your expansion will be monitored and limited to approved zones." "Limited?" Elena's voice carried an edge. "We're being protected or imprisoned?" "You misunderstand," the Xylothian said, its energy field pulsing with what might have been concern. "Your species is biologically fragile. Your bodies require specific atmospheric conditions, narrow temperature ranges, and constant sustenance. Your lifespan is remarkably brief. Your social structures are prone to internal conflict. To expose you to the full weight of galactic affairs would be cruel. We have survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that nearly destroyed our own planet," Marcus interjected. "We're tougher than you think." The council chamber filled with a sound that the human translators struggled to interpret. It was laughter, though not unkind. The aliens were genuinely amused. "Of course you believe that," the Morphidian said gently. "All young species do. But trust us, the galaxy is far more dangerous than anything you have encountered on your small world. This protection is for your own good." The Vrexian opportunity. For 70 years, humanity existed under the Sanctuary Protocols. They established colonies on 3 nearby worlds, always within their approved zone. They traded with dozens of species, though always under supervision. They learned, observed, and adapted to their new reality. Then came the Vrexians. The Vrexian Concordat was not a member of the Galactic Collective, though they maintained diplomatic relations. They were traders, the most successful in the known galaxy. Their ships moved through space like silver shadows, carrying goods, information, and opportunities. They operated in the gray spaces of galactic law, never quite breaking rules but bending them until they screamed. Counselor Thex, a Vrexian with scales that shimmered like oil on water, approached the human delegation at a trade summit on the neutral world of Parsimus IV. His smile revealed rows of needle-like teeth. Ambassador Chen, Thex said, addressing the current human representative, I have a proposal that I believe will benefit both our peoples. Ambassador David Chen, Elena Vasquez's successor, regarded the Vrexian with cautious interest. We're always open to fair trade, Counselor Thex. Fair trade indeed, Thex agreed. I understand that your species is frustrated by the limitations placed upon you by the collective. The sanctuary protocols, while well-intentioned, must feel rather restrictive. We manage, Chen replied diplomatically. But what if you could do more than manage? What if you could expand your operations, increase your resource extraction, and grow your colonies beyond the approved zones? Thex's eyes gleamed. The Vrexian Concordat is not bound by collective protocols. We could facilitate this growth. Chen's chief of staff, Commander Sarah Kimathi, stepped closer. In exchange for what? Merely a partnership. You provide the resources from your expanded operations, minerals, biological compounds, certain manufactured goods, and we handle the distribution and sale. You receive 40% of the profits. 40% of our own resources? Sarah's voice was flat. Consider it a service fee, Thex said smoothly. We take on all the risks of operating outside collective observation. We provide the technology for expanded extraction. We open markets that are currently closed to you. Without us, you have access to none of this. Chen was silent for a long moment. I need to consult with Earth. Of course, Thex said, his smile widening. But consider this. The collective treats you like children who cannot be trusted with sharp objects. We see you as you truly are, capable beings who deserve the opportunity to reach your full potential. All we ask is a fair compensation for making that possible. The exploitation begins. 6 months later, the first joint human Vrexian facility opened on Kepler 442b, one of humanity's frontier colonies. The Vrexians provided advanced mining equipment, orbital refineries, and automated extraction systems. The technology was generations ahead of anything humans currently possessed. The operation expanded rapidly. Within 2 years, 5 more joint facilities had opened across human space. Resources flowed outward in unprecedented quantities. The Vrexians handled everything beyond the extraction point: transportation, refinement, distribution, and sales. The human government celebrated what they called the new prosperity. Employment was high. The colonies were expanding. Technology was advancing through exposure to Vrexian systems. But there were problems that few discussed publicly. The 40% profit share that humans received seemed generous until economists realized they had no way to verify the actual market value of their resources. The Vrexians controlled all pricing information. When human accountants requested independent audits, they were told such requests violated the confidentiality clauses in their contracts. The environmental cost was staggering. The Vrexian extraction methods were efficient but devastatingly thorough. On Kepler 442b, 3 major ecosystems collapsed within 18 months. The Vrexians shrugged off complaints, citing the necessary price of progress. Workers in the facilities began reporting health issues. The Vrexian equipment, while effective, produced byproducts that the aliens never bothered to mention. Respiratory problems became epidemic in mining communities. The Vrexians provided medical technology to treat the symptoms but never addressed the root causes. Most disturbing was the contract's fine print, discovered too late by human legal teams. The agreements lasted for 99 years and could only be terminated by mutual consent. The Vrexians would never consent. They had no reason to. The failed appeal 5 years into the Vrexian partnership, a new human delegation stood before the Galactic Collective. Ambassador Chen, now graying and exhausted, made humanity's case. The Vrexian Concordat is exploiting the very protections you placed upon us, he argued. We cannot engage in military action to defend our interests. We cannot develop the technology to operate independently because of the restrictions you've imposed. We are trapped in contracts that are destroying our colonies and our people. The council listened with what appeared to be sympathy. The current Xylothian Prime Speaker, a different entity from the one who had first judged humanity, responded with carefully chosen words. We understand your frustration, Ambassador. However, the Vrexian Concordat operates outside our jurisdiction. They have broken no collective laws. They're using our protected status against us. Chen's composure cracked. They know we can't fight back. They know you won't intervene. This is exactly the exploitation the sanctuary protocols were supposed to prevent. A new voice entered the discussion. Counselor Thex himself, attending as an observer, spoke from his position in the gallery. The Vrexian Concordat has violated no agreements. Our contracts with humanity were entered into freely and willingly. If the humans find the terms unsatisfactory, that is a matter for negotiation between our peoples, not for collective intervention. Negotiation? Chen laughed bitterly. You hold all the leverage. You control the technology, the markets, the information. What exactly do we have to negotiate with? The Morphidian counselor, its 6 eyes reflecting what might have been genuine regret, spoke gently. This is precisely why the sanctuary protocols exist, Ambassador. Young species often lack the experience to navigate the complexities of galactic commerce. Perhaps this situation, while regrettable, will serve as a valuable lesson. Chen's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Commander Kimathi placed a restraining hand on his shoulder. They both knew that losing composure before the collective would only reinforce the perception of humanity as emotional and immature. Is there nothing you can do? Chen asked quietly. The sanctuary protocols can be revised, the Xylothian offered. However, such revisions require extensive review, typically spanning several cycles. The process could take a decade or more. A decade. The human delegation understood what that meant. By then, entire colonies could be stripped bare, millions more could suffer health complications. The damage would be irreversible. As the session concluded and the humans prepared to depart, Dr. James Park, the delegation's legal expert, made a discovery that would change everything. Buried deep within the original sanctuary protocol documentation, hidden among thousands of pages of legalese and diplomatic language, was a clause that no one had paid attention to in over 70 years. Section 7, subsection 14, paragraph 9. Any species granted protected status retains the fundamental right to self-determination within the boundaries of said protection. Should a protected species demonstrate sufficient cause, they may invoke this right to pursue independent action in defense of their essential interests, provided such action does not violate the core tenets of the sanctuary protocols. Park read the passage 3 times, his heart racing. Then he ran to find Ambassador Chen. The invocation. 3 days later, Ambassador Chen requested an emergency session of the Galactic Collective. The request was unusual enough to be granted immediately. When the council convened, they found the human delegation different from before. Gone was the pleading desperation. In its place was something the aliens had never seen from humanity: cold, calculated determination. Chen stood in the center of the chamber and spoke with absolute clarity. The United Nations of Earth, on behalf of all humanity, hereby invokes Section 7, subsection 14, paragraph 9 of the Sanctuary Protocols. We assert our right to self-determination in defense of our essential interests. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Translators struggled to keep up with the multiple simultaneous conversations. The Xylothian Prime Speaker called for order. Ambassador Chen, that clause has not been invoked in over 4,000 cycles. It requires the demonstration of sufficient cause. We have sufficient cause, Chen replied. The Vrexian Concordat's exploitation threatens the fundamental survival of human colonies. Our ecosystems are collapsing. Our people are dying from preventable illnesses. Our resources are being extracted at unsustainable rates. If this continues, entire human worlds will become uninhabitable. If that doesn't constitute a threat to our essential interests, nothing does. Counselor Thex rose from his position. This is a transparent attempt to escape legitimate contracts. The collective should not have allowed a situation where protected species could be exploited through legal technicalities, Chen interrupted. But that's a discussion for another time. We are invoking our right as it is written in your own laws. We will pursue independent action to defend ourselves. The Kelvorian counselor's crystalline growths flickered with agitation. What action do you intend to take? Chen smiled, and there was something in that smile that made several council members uneasy. It was the smile of someone who had been underestimated for far too long. That, Chen said, is for us to determine, as per our right to self-determination. The Galactic Collective had no choice but to acknowledge the invocation. The clause was clear even if it had been forgotten. Humanity had played by their rules, found a loophole in their own system, and walked through it. As the human delegation left the chamber, Commander Kimathi leaned toward Ambassador Chen. "We've bought ourselves time and legal standing, but we still don't have the technology or resources to actually fight back." Chen's smile remained. "Don't we? We've been watching, learning, and preparing for 70 years. The collective thinks we're fragile. The Vrexians think we're desperate. They're about to learn that being protected doesn't mean being defenseless, and being underestimated is the greatest advantage we could have asked for." In the shadows of the collective's great halls, humanity had just declared that they would no longer be victims. The galaxy had dismissed them as weak, naive, and helpless. That was their first mistake. Their second was assuming that humanity had been idle during 7 decades of so-called protection. The real lesson was about to begin, and it would be taught in a language the galaxy had never expected humans to speak fluently: power. The price of underestimation. The Vrexian Concordat did not take humanity's invocation of self-determination seriously. Why would they? In the 3 months following the emergency collective session, Counselor Thex met with his fellow Vrexian leadership aboard their flagship, the Profiteer's Crown, a massive vessel that served as both warship and mobile trading hub. "The humans are posturing," Thex said, his scales rippling with amusement. "They have no military capability. Their technology is decades behind ours. Their protected status prevents them from developing anything that could threaten us. This invocation of self-determination is nothing more than a desperate legal maneuver." Commander Zelkis, the Concordat's military liaison, was less certain. "Their behavior has changed. Intelligence reports indicate they've ceased all communication with our facility managers. They've stopped requesting meetings to discuss contract terms. It's too quiet. Let them sulk," Thex replied. "Without our technology, their extraction operations grind to a halt. Without our distribution networks, they have no markets. They need us far more than we need them. Give them a few weeks of silence and they'll come crawling back with apologies." Thex was wrong. The humans didn't come crawling back. Instead, they disappeared. The quiet withdrawal on Kepler 442b, the joint human-Vrexian mining facility, employed over 15,000 humans and 300 Vrexian supervisors. The facility operated around the clock, extracting rare earth minerals that fetched premium prices on galactic markets. On the morning of what humans called Day Zero, the Vrexian supervisors arrived at the facility to find it empty. Not abandoned, empty. Every human worker was gone. Every piece of human-designed equipment had been removed. The Vrexian machinery remained. But without human operators who understood the local conditions and without the support infrastructure that human engineers had built, the operation was effectively paralyzed. The same scene repeated across all 17 joint facilities in human space. Thousands of workers vanished overnight. No protest, no violence, no confrontation. Just absence. Counselor Thex contacted Ambassador Chen immediately. "What is the meaning of this? Your people have abandoned their posts." "This is a breach of contract." Chen's face on the communication screen was calm. "Not at all, Counselor. We invoked our right to self-determination. We have determined that participation in these facilities no longer serves our essential interests. We're exercising our right to withdraw our labor." "You cannot simply—" "We can, actually," Chen interrupted. "The sanctuary protocols guarantee us the right to self-determination. Your contracts with us never superseded that fundamental right. You're welcome to continue operating the facilities with your own personnel." Thex's scales darkened with anger. "You know we don't have the workforce to maintain those operations. We don't understand the local ecosystems or the planetary conditions. We need your people." "Then perhaps we should renegotiate the terms of our partnership," Chen said. 85% for us, 15% for you. Full transparency on all market transactions. Immediate cessation of extraction methods that damage local ecosystems. Medical treatment and compensation for all workers who suffered health problems. And a clause allowing either party to terminate the contract with 6 months' notice. Absurd. These terms are non-negotiable, Chen finished. You have 72 hours to accept or reject. After that, we'll begin dismantling the Vrexian equipment in our facilities and selling it to recoup some of our losses over the past 5 years. The transmission ended before Thex could respond. The escalation, the Vrexian Concordat, had not built its empire by accepting unfavorable terms. They had leveraged power, exploited loopholes, and when necessary used force to protect their interests. They believed humans, weak and protected, would not dare to follow through on their threats. They escalated. Vrexian security forces, mercenaries hired from a dozen different species, descended on the human colony of New Olympus. Their mission was simple: occupy the abandoned facility, seize control of human assets, and force the colonists to return to work under the original contract terms. The mercenaries landed expecting frightened civilians. They found something else entirely. The facility was indeed abandoned, but it wasn't undefended. As the first wave of mercenaries approached the main complex, the ground beneath them erupted. What the Vrexians had dismissed as irrigation systems and agricultural equipment were actually concealed defensive positions. Automated turrets emerged from hidden compartments. Barriers rose from the earth. The weapons weren't advanced by galactic standards. They were human-designed, using technology that predated first contact. But they were effective, and they had been positioned with brutal efficiency. The mercenary force retreated in chaos, leaving behind 17 casualties. The Vrexian Concordat was shocked. How had humans, under protected status with strict limitations on military development, managed to build defensive systems? Ambassador Chen provided the answer in a galaxy-wide broadcast that every species with a receiver could access. The sanctuary protocols prohibit us from developing weapons of planetary destruction, Chen explained, standing before a bank of cameras. They prohibit us from building warships or engaging in military conflicts. They do not prohibit us from defending our homes with conventional weaponry. They do not prohibit us from learning from every species we've encountered over 70 years. And they certainly don't prohibit us from being creative. The broadcast continued. For 7 decades, the galaxy has treated humanity as children who needed protection from themselves. You've restricted our expansion, supervised our trade, and limited our development. And during all that time, do you know what we were doing? We were watching. We were learning. Every species that visited our worlds, every trader that docked at our stations, every diplomat that walked our streets, we studied you. We learned your technologies, your tactics, your weaknesses. Chen's expression hardened. The Vrexian Concordat made the mistake of thinking that being protected meant being helpless. They forgot that humans spent thousands of years fighting each other before we ever reached the stars. We know conflict. We understand strategy, and we've had 70 years to prepare for the day when we'd need to defend ourselves. The revelation. The Galactic Collective convened another emergency session. The mood was dramatically different from previous meetings. The council members were no longer dealing with desperate petitioners. They were confronting a species that had just demonstrated military capability that shouldn't have existed. The Xylothian Prime Speaker addressed the human delegation with something approaching respect. Ambassador Chen, you have engaged in armed conflict. This violates the sanctuary protocols. We engaged in self-defense on our own sovereign territory, Chen corrected. The protocols prohibit us from initiating military conflicts. They say nothing about defending ourselves when attacked. The Vrexian Concordat sent armed forces to occupy human colonies. We responded proportionally. Your defensive systems show technological sophistication that exceeds what we believed humanity possessed, the Morphidian counselor observed. How is this possible? Dr. Sarah Park, who had replaced her late father James Park as the delegation's legal expert, stepped forward. The sanctuary protocols restricted our military development, but never defined what constituted military versus civilian technology. For 70 years, we've been developing advanced computing systems, material science, artificial intelligence, and manufacturing techniques, all ostensibly for civilian purposes. Agricultural automation, mining equipment, construction tools, none of it violated your restrictions. We simply applied these civilian technologies in creative ways when we needed to defend ourselves. The Kelvorian counselor's crystals pulsed with what might have been admiration. You deliberately exploited the ambiguity in the protocols. We learned from the best, Chen replied, glancing toward where Counselor Thex sat in seething silence. The Vrexians taught us that galactic law is full of gray spaces. We just found different spaces to occupy. Commander Kimathi activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. It showed star charts of human space, but with details that made several council members lean forward in surprise. For 70 years, you've monitored our approved expansion, Kimathi explained. You've watched our colonies grow in the zones you designated as safe. What you didn't watch was what we were building underground in asteroid bases in the outer reaches of our systems, We've been constructing infrastructure that you never looked for because you never imagined we could. The display zoomed in on various locations, hidden shipyards and asteroid fields, underground research facilities on remote moons, automated manufacturing complexes in the radiation-bathed orbits of gas giants, places where no biological being would willingly work but where human-designed robots operated continuously. We don't have warships, Chen admitted. The protocols prohibit that clearly, but we have mining vessels with reinforced hulls and powerful engines. We have cargo haulers capable of moving asteroids. We have exploration drones with sophisticated sensor arrays. We have construction equipment that can reshape landscapes. None of this is military technology by the letter of your laws, but all of it can be repurposed if we need to defend ourselves. The revelation settled over the council like a cold blanket. Humanity hadn't violated the sanctuary protocols. They had simply existed within them more cleverly than anyone anticipated. The philosophical confrontation, Counselor Thex could contain himself no longer. This is exactly why humanity needed protection. You're proving that you cannot be trusted with freedom. You've been secretly building military capability while hiding behind civilian designations. You're dangerous. Chen turned to face the Vrexian directly. Dangerous? We've harmed no one who didn't attack us first. We've taken no territory that wasn't ours. We've violated no laws. We simply refuse to be victims of exploitation. If that makes us dangerous, then perhaps the problem isn't with us. You speak of exploitation, Thex hissed. We offered you opportunity. We brought you technology and markets you couldn't access on your own. You brought us chains disguised as gifts, Kimathi interjected. You knew we were restricted by protected status. You knew we couldn't develop competitive technology. You knew we had no way to verify the true value of our resources. You exploited every vulnerability the sanctuary protocols created. You made us dependent and then extracted everything you could. The Xylothian Prime Speaker's energy field fluctuated. The collective did not intend for the protocols to create such vulnerabilities. We genuinely believed we were protecting humanity. From what? Chen asked, and the question hung in the air. From exploitation? The protocols made us more vulnerable to it. From war? We've lived in peace for 70 years, but only because we had nothing worth fighting over, and no way to defend what little we had. From ourselves? We've caused no internal conflicts during this time. So what exactly were you protecting us from? Dr. Park spoke up. I've studied the history of protected status across the galaxy. In the past 4,000 cycles, the collective has granted protection to 37 species. Of those, only 9 have ever had that status lifted. The others remain protected indefinitely, never advancing beyond limited roles in galactic affairs. Some don't even exist anymore as distinct cultures. They've been absorbed into the civilizations of their so-called protectors. The implications rippled through the council. Protection had never been about safety. It had been about control. About keeping emerging species in their place, manageable and non-threatening. We don't want to be your enemies, Chen said, addressing the entire collective. But we won't be your pets either. We won't be cosmic children who need supervision. We're ready to stand on our own, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. The dismantling, the Vrexian Concordat had one last card to play. They controlled the extraction facilities, the refineries, and most importantly, the distribution networks that connected human resources to galactic markets. Without access to those markets, humanity's economy would collapse. Counselor Thex made his final offer. Return to the original contracts, or we embargo all human goods from galactic trade. You'll be isolated, cut off from the prosperity you've tasted. Your colonies will wither. Chen's response was simple. Proceed. Over the next 6 months, humanity demonstrated why 70 years of observation had been their greatest asset. They had studied every species' needs, every market demand, every trade route. They knew exactly who needed what, and they began reaching out directly. The Morphidians needed biological compounds for their medical industry. Humans offered them directly, cutting out Vrexian middlemen. The price was lower than what the Morphidians had been paying, and the quality was identical. The Kelvorians required rare earth minerals for their technology manufacturing. Human miners delivered straight to Kelvorian space, again bypassing Vrexian distribution. The Xylothians, beings of pure energy, needed specific crystalline structures to maintain their containment fields. Humans had been producing these crystals for decades, selling them to Vrexians who then sold them to the Xylothians at markup. Now humans sold them directly. Species after species found that dealing directly with humanity was cheaper and more efficient than working through the Vrexian Concordat. The Vrexians had built their empire on being indispensable middlemen. Humans were systematically proving they weren't needed at all. The Concordat's profits plummeted. Their trade routes emptied. Their carefully constructed monopolies crumbled. Within 8 months, they were facing economic collapse. Counselor Thex returned to the Galactic Collective demanding intervention. The humans are destroying legitimate business through predatory pricing. They're violating trade regulations. The Morphidian counselor, now purchasing directly from human suppliers, examined the complaint with all 6 eyes. They're selling at fair market prices. The only thing predatory here is how much you've been overcharging everyone for decades. We provided services, distribution, quality assurance, market access. Services that apparently aren't worth what you were charging for them, the Kelvorian observed. The humans have demonstrated that your role was largely unnecessary. That's not illegal. That's just competition. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The Vrexians had taught humanity about exploiting gray spaces in galactic law. Now humans were using those same lessons to dismantle the Vrexian Empire legally and systematically. The New Order 2 years after humanity invoked their right to self-determination, the Galactic Collective held a historic vote. The question was simple. Should humanity's protected status be lifted? The debate was intense. Some species argued that humanity had proven themselves capable of independence. Others warned that removing protection would unleash an unpredictable force on the galaxy. Ambassador Chen addressed the council one final time. We don't ask for your permission to be free. We ask for your recognition of what we already are. We're not the naive species you discovered 70 years ago. We're not the weak creatures you thought needed protection. We're humans. We learn, we adapt, we overcome. We've done it throughout our history, and we've done it here among the stars. If you lift our protected status, we won't seek revenge for past slights. We won't pursue conquest or domination. We'll simply be what we've always wanted to be. Equals, partners in this galactic community, contributing what we can and asking only for fair treatment in return. But understand this, Chen continued, and his voice carried steel beneath the diplomacy. If you choose to maintain our protected status despite everything we've demonstrated, we'll work within that system as we have been. We'll find every loophole, every gray space, every ambiguity. We'll grow and develop in ways you can't imagine and won't see coming. We'll be protected in name only, and you'll have no say in what we become. Or you can recognize reality now, engage with us as equals, and build something better together. The choice is yours, but you need to understand. Humanity is no longer asking permission. We're simply informing you of what we intend to do. The vote took 3 days. In the end, it was unanimous. Humanity's protected status was officially lifted. The Xylothian Prime Speaker made the formal announcement. Humanity of Earth, you are hereby recognized as a fully independent species with all rights and responsibilities within the Galactic Collective. Welcome to the community of equals. Chen bowed respectfully. We're honored, and we promise you won't regret this decision. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Commander Kamathi walked alongside Chen through the crystalline halls. Do you really think they won't regret it? Chen smiled. Probably. But that's their problem now, not ours. They had 70 years to treat us fairly when we couldn't fight back. They chose exploitation instead. Now they get to deal with humanity unchained. Let's see how that works out for them. Epilogue. The warning 5 years after humanity achieved full independence, Ambassador Chen gave a lecture at the Galactic Academy, the premier educational institution for diplomats and leaders from across civilized space. Students from dozens of species filled the auditorium. I'm often asked what lesson humanity wants the galaxy to take from our experience, Chen said, now older, but no less sharp. The answer is simple. Never confuse protection with imprisonment. Never mistake restriction for safety. And most importantly, never assume that keeping someone weak serves anyone's interests. The sanctuary protocols were created with good intentions. I believe that. But good intentions without wisdom can create systems that cause the very problems they're meant to prevent. By restricting humanity's development, the collective made us vulnerable to exploitation. By limiting our growth, they gave us time to study everyone else without being studied in return. By treating us as children, they ensured we'd spend every moment preparing for the day we could stand on our own. The Vrexian Concordat made a different mistake. They saw our restrictions as weaknesses to exploit. They assumed that being legally limited meant being functionally helpless. They forgot that humans spent our entire evolutionary history finding creative solutions to impossible problems. That's what we do. That's what we've always done. A student, a young Morphidian, raised one of its 6 appendages. Ambassador Chen, do you believe humanity would have developed differently without protected status? Chen considered the question carefully. Probably. We might have made different mistakes, faced different challenges. But here's what I know. Being underestimated was the greatest gift the galaxy could have given us. While everyone watched the doors you told us not to open, we were finding windows you never knew existed. While you monitored the weapons you forbade us to build, we were creating tools that could be weapons if we needed them to be. Humanity learned patience during those 70 years. We learned observation. We learned that sometimes the best way to overcome an obstacle isn't to smash through it, but to flow around it like water. We learned that appearing weak can be a strength, that being underestimated gives you time to prepare. Another student, a Kelvorian, asked, "Are you saying the galaxy should fear humanity?" "No," Chen replied. "I'm saying the galaxy should respect humanity. There's a difference. Fear is what you feel towards something that wants to hurt you. Respect is what you give to something that could hurt you but chooses not to. Humanity doesn't want to be feared. We want to be respected. We want to be treated as equals, partners, colleagues. We want fair trade, honest relationships, and mutual benefit. But," and Chen's expression grew serious, "we also want the galaxy to remember what happened when people tried to exploit us, when they tried to keep us weak, when they underestimated what we could become. We survived. We adapted. We overcame. And we did it all while playing by rules designed to keep us limited. So no, don't fear humanity, but don't underestimate us either. Don't assume that because we're willing to cooperate, we're unable to compete. Don't mistake our desire for peace as an inability to defend ourselves. And never ever assume that being younger than you means being weaker than you." The lecture ended to thoughtful silence. As students filed out discussing what they'd heard, one of the Academy's professors approached Chen. "That was quite a warning you delivered, Ambassador." Chen shrugged. "Not a warning. Just a reminder. The galaxy spent 70 years teaching humanity about power. How it's used, how it's abused, how it's disguised as benevolence. We learned those lessons well. Now everyone gets to live with the consequences of being our teachers. Do you think humanity will seek revenge against those who exploited you?" "Revenge?" Chen laughed. "No. We're too busy building our future to waste time dwelling on the past. But we'll never forget what we learned. We'll never again allow ourselves to be in a position where others can exploit our weakness, and we'll make sure that any species that tries to treat humanity as inferior understands exactly what kind of mistake they're making. The galaxy called us a protected species because they thought we needed protection. They were wrong. We didn't need protection from the galaxy. We just needed time to understand it. And now that we do, we're exactly where we've always dreamed of being, standing on our own, making our own choices, and facing whatever comes next on our own terms. That's not a warning. That's just reality. And reality, as humanity has learned quite well, doesn't care what anyone thinks it should be. It simply is.